everybody thinks, everything's a pizza. If it takes longer than it was supposed to, it must be free. If I'm not happy with it, it's free. We're in an industry that just doesn't work. There's if a job's not perfect, it's not perfect, but it doesn't make it have no value.
Welcome to All Things Wood Floor, brought to you by Wood Floor Business. I'm your host, Steve Diggins, and today we have Tim Nassis of Woodchuck Floors, Toronto, Canada. We're going to talk a little bit about vertical integration in the hardwood flooring supply chain, how it compares to the U.S. market, changes in the flooring business models post and pre-pandemic, and what we've learned from it all. It's All Things Wood Floor, so welcome, Tim Nassis, Woodchuck Floors. Once again, floor pros around the world. Let's get to it. All right, Tim Nassis, Woodchuck Floors. Welcome to All Things Wood Floor.
Hey, Stephen, how are you?
Good. Finally get a chance to meet you. We've spoken and have a chance to kick a lot of this off. Did you recently, was it this year or recently, that you guys won with Wood Flooring Business Magazine, or you got a retailer award?
Yeah. So Outstanding Retailer of the Year award. So that was really nice to be recognized for many years in the industry and a lot of hard work, especially during the last couple of years with COVID. Business has changed. There's been some challenges, but we've carried on and we've remained successful. We're happy to keep doing it.
And then let's see. So I looked online. I think you and was it your brother took over in 2007?
Yeah. So my dad's retirement was more like a military coup. As in a lot of people that are in family businesses, they can relate to the fact that there's some butting of heads, as it were. So my dad was just about 60, and we sort of came to the conclusion that it was time to make a transition. He had been doing it for since 1970. He'd been working 60, 70 hours a week, and we just decided that we'd change reins. And so his exit was clean, as clean as it can be. And so I took over with my brother, but I'd been working with my dad since I was, 13, 14 years old. So.
You say you started in 1970?
Yeah, the business started in 1970. And I started with my dad when I was, 13, 14 years old, summer job. It's a lot of experience in the industry. It was actually a funny story when I worked for my dad. The first time I had a summer job, I worked for my dad, and as kids do, you get back to school, and we were sitting around with my friends, and they were like, well, yeah, who had a summer job? How much money did you make? And some of the guys, I made $1,500. I made $2,000. I'm like, oh, I made $6,500. Like, oh my goodness. Like, you must have been making like $15, $20 an hour. I'm like, no, I made $3.25 an hour. I was working 60, 70 hours a week, no overtime. Minimum wage at the time was $3.75. So I was working for my dad making $3.25, and wow. Litigation is still in progress on that one. So
well, yeah, you said it was like a coup. Doesn't sound like you left quietly.
Yeah, well, it was. It's the challenges of family businesses are certainly there. I can sympathize with anybody that's a second or third or more generation of family business. It's hard to make it work.
How was it when it was set up with your dad? Was it retail? Because there was no internet or anything. Was it
so
install?
My dad,
yeah. What was the profile?
My dad basically started as an installer and a finisher. He worked for one of the bigger companies in Toronto, as a lot of guys did then. They worked for 5 or 6 years. They went on their own, and he grew. He went from him and a helper to him, a couple of helpers in the garage. We bought our first location down in the south end of Toronto there on Raleigh Avenue in the sort of early mid 80s. And he expanded from there. We used to do primarily sand and finish installations. But then when I started working for my dad, I kind of said to him, I'm like, we're buying all these sundries, these supplies, we're buying flooring, we're all buying from either the manufacturer or, in that case, the manufacturers. We were buying direct for sandpaper and urethane and wood. We were the first dealer in the GTA, in the Greater Toronto area, for Bruce. We brought pre-finished product to the market, old That's C8, C9, wax finish, heavy bevel. We sold truckloads of that stuff
H
out of our
series,
little
H
location
block,
there.
D4, D5.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
All of that stuff.
Light and natural,
But at the
rich.
time I suggested to my dad, it's like, why don't we start, selling those supplies, the urethane and everything like that to some of the smaller guys. And he was like, I don't know, grunted something in Greek and didn't say no. So I produced my first contractor price list back then, and I did it on Lotus 123 and printed it on a daisy wheel printer. Ran it through the biggest photocopier probably that's ever existed, and that was it. It was our pro shop, and our contractor sales were born.
Maybe in Greek he was saying vertical integration. You were one of the one of the first to go down that route. You were looking in both directions. Was it who was involved at the time? Was everybody? Was just you and your brother, your dad? Did your dad still hang on with you guys?
Yeah, I mean, that was back in the early times. I mean, it was me working for my dad. I left high school. I started working for him directly out of high school. I don't know. I didn't go to college. I didn't go to university. It didn't seem to make mathematical sense to me. I sort of knew what I needed to do. I learned on the fly, and I was getting paid for doing something as opposed to paying somebody else to teach me something. So, just kind of went that way.
I read online you had posted that you have a PhD in common sense. Those are boy, you can appreciate those people. Please, I don't care where you come from. I don't care about your degree, your background.
What level. Education's super important, but experience always beats what you can read in a book, right? I mean, if you found a doctor that said, "Hey, I've read every book about your condition, but I've never actually done the surgery," you probably wouldn't trust him very much. So.
No, you probably wouldn't. So that was a lot of hard knocks, and then. Did you physically got out, installed, sand, finished, edging, staining, all that?
Yeah,
you did.
Yeah. As a kid, that's what I was doing. 15, 16, 17, 18 years old. I was out on the tools with the rest of the guys that my dad employed, all the tradesmen. That evolved eventually into me doing more estimates. I would go out and do our estimates in the estimating department, give people pricing. And then as things grew, I came sort of off the road. Our retail wholesale business was really growing. So, working the showroom, just gradually you start taking over more responsibility, doing the buying, all that kind of stuff. So, yeah, it was.
Back then, did you get your own? Did you get your flooring from a distributor, or how did that work?
So the Toronto market was kind of a little unique. There wasn't a lot of true distribution channels available to us. So a lot of the big retailers, there were maybe half a dozen of them in the Toronto area at the time, were buying or doing enough volume that the manufacturers were dealing directly with us. Okay. So we were buying with unfinished. We were buying directly from the mills. We were bringing it in from the States with sundries like urethane, Fabulon, old oil-based finish, sandpapers from Norton. All that stuff was coming direct from the manufacturer. And because we had a business going, we were reselling it. We were able to keep the volumes up. The manufacturers were happy with us. And, that's kind of remained to this day. So we do sell to retail, but a lot of our business is that wholesale contractor or small builder type of business, where we give them the supplies and then they handle their own installation or finishing.
It's funny, when I started out, I had a boss that was the North American representative for Tri-Pack, which was Bruce at the time. It wasn't an Armstrong thing. And he used to have this saying in distribution where we are. He'd say, you can't be a little bit pregnant. You can't sand and finish floors and then go settle the play. He goes, well, unless you're in Canada. So there's a lot of companies like yours. You're integrated forwards and back, selling to the locals, but buying from the mills. Is that something that you can still do today? It doesn't happen here. I mean, it barely happens here. If you're buying in that capacity, it's from smaller mills, et cetera. But can you still do that up in Canada? Does that work?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, we don't do as much unfinished in the last couple of years as we used to. But when we were buying it direct in trailer loads out of the mills in the U.S. We were bringing it out of Wisconsin, And yeah, it was full trailer loads. I mean, when we resold flooring, like unfinished and stuff like that, it was because we invested in it. You know, we were bringing in 16,000 feet of mixed widths. The mills always want you to keep the mix there, right? You can't take all 2 1/4 select and better.
Correct.
And we did that. We're doing a couple of trucks a month, and we were bringing it in. The volume was there. So, and that's still something we do. We don't do as much of it just because unfinished has gotten so costly.
Sure.
By the time you put the sanding and finishing on it, and people also want, they want 7-inch hand scraped white. So, pre-finished it makes that just so much easier. Trying to do that on site is cost prohibitive.
So do you have crews that do install and crews that do sand and finish, or both, or how?
We do still some sand and finish and installs, but it's very small. Okay. I mean, where we used to do 5-7 jobs a day, running 5 and 6, 10 crews, now we do 4 or 5 jobs a week, and we price them accordingly. I have a dedicated team that does that. We don't, if it's too expensive, there's lots of guys out there. Go ahead, do it. It's kind of just a niche business for us. We'll take on the projects that are probably a little over the head for the majority of the smaller sand and finish or install guys that just want to go in, bang in a living room and dining room and get out of there. So,
is it typically different in Canada than the U.S.? Because I've spoken with 3 different folks like you in Canada in the last year, and they all have a very similar model. They're kind of chief cook, bottle washer. They're covering everything.
Yeah, I mean, myself, one of the reasons why, we sort of changed directions when my dad was with the company. It was kind of like he lived to work, and I wanted to work to live. So what I've done in the last 5 or 6 years, 10 years, is really become a business owner, and I run a business. So I'm familiar with all those things, but I haven't worked a showroom in probably 5 or 10 years. I have guys that do that. Okay. I don't go out and visit sites. I have an estimator that works for me, and I take care of all the back office stuff, because running a business these days is not like it was 20, 30 years ago. I mean, there's so many, you have compliance issues, you have, privacy issues. All of these things create complexity in a business. Back in the day, there was no such thing as either workers' compensation or insurance or things like that. We have to deal with all those rules and regulations now, and that back office stuff, that's a job just by itself. So I hire guys, I train my guys well, I treat them well, and they do a good job. And we make sure that we work together as a team. They have their roles to fill, and I have mine.
Well, that seems to happen when you're vertically integrated in 2 directions like that, which is simply, how many middlemen can you cut out? The trick to it, it's usually highly functional. The problem is, as you're saying, is all the extra that goes into the new jobs that you're taking on. Like now you're handling freight and bringing in material and returns and customer service and all those other hats. Do you have to juggle those hats all day long, or you pretty much got it spread out?
Yeah, I mean, I leave it. If I give a responsibility to one of my guys, they own that responsibility. So I don't get involved unless the building's on fire and the sprinkler system has failed. So, even when it comes to dealing with clients, I really trust my guys enough. Hey, you guys deal with it. You started it, you estimated it, you owned it, you're familiar with the job. Do I have to get involved? Yeah, of course, because it's my business. I need to sometimes, speak to clients and sort out things. But that is usually that's the exception, because if it becomes the rule, then I might as well have just done it in the first place.
How do you keep and train people in those positions? That's always the tricky part, right?
It's tough. Yeah.
Yeah.
You gotta treat people well these days. Sometimes it's not just about money. Everybody needs to make a good wage. Costs of things are going up. Everybody wants to make more money, obviously, but I found a lot of people, a lot of my employees, they also want to be told that they're doing a good job. They want to be rewarded when they go above and beyond. I'm not a big fan of job descriptions. We have them, and that's kind of where the world has gone. But I don't like to hear, that that's not my job. It's everybody's job to make sure the business is successful. And if the business is successful, then everybody should reap the rewards, not just me. I shouldn't be driving around in a Lamborghini on a private yacht while my guys toil away, because that sends the wrong message to them too, right? And it doesn't create a good working relationship. So, I try to treat my guys well, little perks here and there. A few weeks ago, I couriered, 10 cases of beer to one of my guys' place because, he went above and beyond. So,
there you go.
It's not really, it's not a huge cost. I mean, what is it? $300 or $400, but it shows that you're thinking about somebody, and it shows that you appreciate the effort they've put in and when they've gone above and beyond.
Now that makes sense. Like you said, that's the biggest problem in our industry right now is not, well, it used to be getting qualified people. Now it's basically getting people. You're hoping to take your better, more trained people and have them somehow be shadowed by the newer people, because they all want to learn, but flooring, I don't care how ambitious you are, you're not going to learn that in a day or two or overnight or a year. It might take you that long to learn how to sharpen a scraper or clean a corner, but then you get onto the machines and the equipment. It's very, very difficult. About how many people do you have out there in the field every day?
Total on staff, we have about 10, 12 people.
Okay.
In the office. Our outside, as I say, we don't do a lot of installs. So most of my guys are in the office. I've got 3 or 4 full-time sales guys in the office. We're open on Saturdays, so they alternate Saturdays. So they, when they work on Saturday, they take a day off during the week, just because, everybody needs some downtime. You can't have people working every day, otherwise they get burned out.
Well, I imagine if you're that progressive, then you're working online sales too, as well.
Yeah, 100%. About probably 4 or 5 years ago, we decided to open an online store specifically for our contractor business. So for the sundries, when a guy's going out to sand and finish Mrs. Jones's house, he knows what he needs. He needs some sanding belts. He needs his finish. He needs the stain. He doesn't need to touch and feel it. He doesn't need to. He knows what he works with. He knows the products he likes to use. So we thought, this is the time to do it. And it was a tough go off the first year or so. But honestly, the pandemic was the best thing for it, because now guys were sort of forced to start doing things a little bit differently. And I mean, I know in my neighborhood, and I'm sure it's the same as yours, I mean, Amazon's on the street every single day.
Constantly.
Right? People are now super comfortable with ordering online. So it saves guys a ton of time. In some cases, it saves them a lot of money, because we're now in a global market. Toronto's a very competitive market. It's as competitive as big U.S. cities like Chicago, New York. So, what you need, order it. A day later, 2 days later, it arrives on your porch, and you know what? You don't have to spend time go buying that or running around for it. I mean, there's always the time you might need to, but if you plan ahead, you could get all of that stuff online, shipped right to your door.
Are you having the same supply line issues that like everybody is, with different chemicals, different products, different countries? How about in your case, bringing in from different countries? Has that been difficult?
Yeah, it's, we've brought products in from years ago. We brought our own laminate line in from China. I went to China, specified the product, designed it. I did all the marketing for it, the packaging. We have to be bilingual here, so we did the English-French translation. It was all compliant, and that product was good for us. Now that market sort of died out, but we brought products in. I brought products in from China. I brought products in from Europe, the U.S. Obviously, I mean, most of the unfinished mills are in the U.S. So we're super familiar with how things go across, for example, the Canada-U.S. border. So having that experience being on the Canadian side with being an importer gave us some ability to understand what people are what the stumbling blocks are. And the U.S. is actually quite lenient on imports when it comes to taxes and duty. So any order $800 US or less flows into the US from Canada, tax-free, duty-free.
Okay.
So there's really no issue as long as you keep that order under that per day too. So you can bring an order in on Tuesday and bring one in on Friday, and you're fine. You go over that amount, it's going to get flagged. But for the most part, that's a pretty reasonable order. I mean, there are guys that are buying bigger orders than that, but you can break them up. At that point as well, the freight really becomes kind of negligible. But yeah, it's been really successful for it. Every month it grows. We have some customers in the Northeast, in New York, they're super good customers of ours. They order on a regular basis, and we're doing well with it. It's been successful.
What are they ordering mostly? Not flooring, but mostly supplies?
Yeah, sandpaper, finish. We're a Loba dealer. We're a Norton dealer. Mm-hmm. So those products, they're ordering. They use the product. They know what they like. They'll order, 5-8 gallons of finish and 2 or 3 rolls of sandpaper, some belts, their edger discs. We package it up. It goes out by courier. And our customers in the Northeast, honestly, they're getting it if we ship it today, there's a good chance they'll get it tomorrow, if not the following day. So there's always challenges, but we work through them, and we've worked out a lot of the little hiccups along the way.
Is it easy to do the collections and the payments? Is it all basically credit card, or is it electronic?
It's an online store. So an online store. So put in your credit card number, and it fulfills your order for you. Gotcha. So how we've got it set up is we authorize the card online, and we make sure we've got everything, because sometimes there can be a little, if my website says I've got 3 rolls of sandpaper, but somebody happened to order one at the same time, I might only have 2. So we don't charge the card. It doesn't actually get processed until we make sure the order is complete, and then we send it out. And the site figures out the shipping, everything like that. You know what you're going to pay. The nice thing for our U.S. customers is we bill in Canadian dollars. So as soon as that U.S. client gets it, they're going to get like 25-30% off as soon as it hits their credit card, because they're going to convert it to U.S. dollars. So something that's $10 here is more like $7 or $8 when they get it on their credit card.
This episode is sponsored by Woodchuck Flooring, flooring and customer service experts with 52 years under their tool belts. The Woodchuck team loves to talk shop as much as we do, but when it's time to supply shop, they give you more floor and less chore. Show up to the job site like a superhero when you shop online for the latest in commercial and residential flooring supplies, maintenance tools, and the basics like nitrile gloves. They offer shipping nationwide. Get 15% off your first purchase of all the best quality stains, finishes, and supplies you need to activate your installation superpowers with the code WeCanBeHeroes. That's one word, all caps, We Can Be Heroes, at shop.woodchuckflooring.com. That's it for now. Let's get back to Steve Diggins' talk with Woodchuck's own Tim Nassis.
We had done an article with you in it about your company, and it was in Wood Floor Business Magazine. And I know one of the bits of advice, and I agree with you, and this is in business and anything, was you had said, you got to make sure you have the right people in the right places.
Yeah, I mean, don't overlook. Sometimes you'll hire a person and they're good, but they're just not the right fit for the job. Is there another place in your organization that you can use them? Or if somebody's got some experience, keep that in mind and move them into it. Don't be afraid to give people responsibility. Good, hardworking people out there sometimes are held back because there's nowhere to go, because it's a small organization and the boss wants to do everything. I realized a long time ago, it's true. A lot of business owners will say, hey, you know what? But nobody does it like me. If I do it, it's going to be done right and it's going to be done better. And you know what? That's absolutely true. But what I've learned is if I get somebody else to do it and it's maybe only 85-90% of what I would do, well, that's okay, because I didn't have to do it.
Sure.
So I can do something else. So if I want to finish at 4:00, but I still want the job done the same as I'm going to do it. Well, I can't have both. But if I get somebody else to do it, yeah, maybe I can take Friday afternoon off, because there's cost to doing business. And as you expand a business, let's face it, you can be you and a helper and do everything else. But as you get bigger, we've only got 2 hands and 2 feet and so many hours in the day, so we can't do everything. And when you try to do everything, well, then you get a breakdown. You get a breakdown with your health, or you get a breakdown in your family, because something's got to give, right? So it's important to strike that work-life balance for yourself, but also for your employees.
Well, you were saying about getting a material, let's say, from your spot to the U.S. or wherever quickly. Well, rather than model your entire business after, how you learned or how you want it made, there is the Amazon model. This is what people want, and what you're in is it has to be fast and perfect. That's what they're looking for. Something fast, get it to me quick. Here's my money, and I don't want to return it. Do you have a situation where, you must obviously have to handle returns. Is that a big chunk? That seems like that's going to be pretty taxing on anybody, the return part of it.
We don't really have any returns because we're really clear up front. And our online business is not really geared for the retail customer. It's not really geared for the DIYer. It's geared for the wood flooring professional.
Pros.
So, you know what? If you order 4 quarts of antique brown stain, and it turns out you need chestnut, you're probably just going to keep the quarts of the antique, because you're going to use it eventually.
Sure.
You buy a roll of sandpaper, you use a roll of sandpaper. The guys are used to that. We're not selling, to Mr. and Mrs. Smith, where they're like, oh, I have an extra gallon of finish, I don't need it. We sort of say that right up front. So, our site is clearly, and we have to do that for compliance issues in Canada, in our province. These are for professional use only. They're labeled as such. So we're pretty clear up front. And that site is geared to the wood flooring professional. It's not geared toward the retail customers. So we don't get a lot of returns. Sometimes we'll get mistakes where couriers are famous for running over boxes, and you know what? We got to eat those mistakes, because they're not the client's fault. They're not our fault, but somebody's got to pay. And couriers are not the nicest when it comes to handling those claims, but that's just part of the cost of business. We don't have it happen a lot, but when it happens, we take care of it.
Well, there are certain couriers, they have giant plastic bags that somehow have their thoroughly written instructions on what you screwed up, that they put their boxes in and hand you leave on your doorstep.
Yeah.
One complaint fits all. So what about, so I know years ago when I was in a similar situation where they can't always get everything you were looking for. Back when there might have been a distributor with wood, but they may or may not have had the products you were looking for to install, sand, finish, the nails, the cleats, the poly, etc. So I remember there was floor style products. Everybody knew floor style products. They were like the Sears and Roebuck. They had a catalog. You could order your stuff. And sometimes it was just the convenience. And then you'd fill out a form and mail it in. And years later, you could fax it in, and you could write your credit card number. How does the marketing work for you now? It's got to be vastly different. I'm sure you're not mailing out $100
but you know what?
catalogs.
Those guys were onto something.
Yeah,
they really were, because they were probably just about 15 years, 20 years ahead of their time. Because now, where's the market? People are ordering groceries at home. You can get on your phone. You know what, honey? We're out of lettuce. You throw money at the problem, lettuce will be there in half an hour. So, the market has changed. And as I said, with COVID, it even changed exponentially more. People are much more willing to do that online experience thing. And people are realizing, even though there's a delivery fee involved, you know what? It's actually cheaper for me, because if I've got to drive from my house across the city to pick up 2 gallons of finish, with the price of fuel these days, that's not cheap either. Sure. You're sitting in traffic, you're wasting time, and you're I guess up where you guys are paying almost, was it $4 a gallon now or something like that?
It went almost, well, no, it was $4.79. Today I was thrilled to get it for $4.19. So it's been insane.
And we're in the same boat here. Right now gas is about $1.75, $1.80 a liter. So there's almost 4 liters in a gallon. So
people are persistent and they're creative. I was in Florida when COVID hit and almost couldn't get back home. And I remember ordering a pizza, and it had become, wow, what do we do? Where do we go? We couldn't go to the beaches. We were escorted off of the beaches by the DPW. And I remember a restaurant said, just put a chair up front. So ordered pizza, pay with a credit card. They would drive up, throw it on the chair, beep their horn, and gone. Or you could go to a restaurant, they would go out to the back of the parking lot, tell you to open your trunk, and they would throw the food in your trunk. I think that we all, I know I have, you had to have learned some lessons from COVID. I picked up some pretty good tips. Like, we wouldn't have a podcast if it wasn't for, COVID and trying to figure out how to communicate with people. And for me to go and do floor consulting and look at somebody's situation and visually see what was going on, and then even maybe write or talk about it. You had to pick up a few things from this whole COVID mess.
Yeah, 100%. And one of the things that I made sure to do during COVID, because, hey, everybody took a slowdown at some point. For some it was longer than others. For other industries, it could have been devastating. Like you say, in the restaurant industry, they were really struggling. But here the government did pass out a lot of free money. They tried to support small and medium-sized business, and whether you agreed with the policies or you didn't, there were funds made available to small businesses, and that happened here too. But during that time, our sales were down, but I gave all that money back to my guys. I topped up their salaries and everything like that to make sure that they weren't going to take a hit, because I knew at some point the market's going to come back. And if your guys are upset with you then you're starting all over again. So, I could have put that money in the bank and maybe done stuff, but we did, we did some showroom renovations. I got my guys, they weren't doing anything. So we did a big showroom renovation. It needed it. We took that time. And I made sure that they had work, even though we really didn't have a lot of revenue coming in, or at least not as much as we did, pre-pandemic. So that was important, but learning that, making sure, and we also spent money on marketing. We continue to spend money on marketing, because the first name that's going to pop into somebody's head when things turn around is going to be the one they've heard when times are tough. So
you said marketing's like air, correct?
Yeah, it is. I mean, you always need it, right? You can't do without. Sales is always blaming marketing that they don't have any sales, but you need to market 100% every day, all day. It's always the first budget to get slashed, and I never understood that.
Well, it was the biggest joke in college, right? They'd say, well, if you don't know what you're doing, just declare marketing. And I remember running business with my father, then my first business, other businesses, and businesses that I watched that had everything, when they suffered and struggled, it's because they had the philosophy, well, we're making so much money, we don't need to market. And then when they had no money, they said, we have no money for marketing. You've got to be in the consumer's mind at all times. And I've seen some incredibly brilliant people start practices, law practices, medical practice that fell apart because they don't know how to bring in business and maintain customers. And I believe it was you that said, people are your greatest asset. That's exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, they are. I mean, everything really at the end of the day is a people business, right? There's somebody at the end who's a person who has likes and dislikes and a personality that's going to buy your product. So on the other end, you've got people that work for you that have likes and dislikes and personalities, and they're trying to sell them a product. If the two people aren't working together, then the product's not going to change hands. So you got to make sure both ends, the people on both ends of that equation are the right fit for you. And sometimes that might be just telling a client, you know what, this job's not for us. I've learned that so many times. You get these big jobs, but a lot of the times when you feel, you know what, this job just doesn't seem like it's going to go well. In my experience, just let it go. Because if you don't start with if you're not gelling with your client and you're having disagreements before the contract's even signed, it's not going to get any better.
Well, isn't that's a real biggie? It was when I was in retail too. It's just meeting customers' expectations. Sometimes they're very unrealistic, or they're not technically sound, or that's got to be difficult for what you're doing. There are different levels of expectations.
Yeah, and these days too, we live in an instant world. We live in a world there's companies like Amazon, there's companies like Costco, right? And they're just like, well, if you're not happy, don't pay us. Just take it; it's free. Now, everybody thinks, everything's a pizza. If it takes longer than it was supposed to, it must be free. If I'm not happy with it, it's free. We're in an industry that just doesn't work. If a job's not perfect, it's not perfect, but it doesn't make it have no value. So it's not going to be free. And you know what? Sometimes we don't get it right, and we need to own up to our mistakes, and we need to compensate a customer for something that went wrong. But the problem is so many customers today just the distance between what they think the job is worth at the end and what you've charged for it are vastly different. So I had a client a little while ago, and the job wasn't perfect, and they expected all their money back. But I'm trying to explain to them, the job isn't perfect, but there's a long way between perfect and no value. You're saying it's worth nothing just because you're not happy.
Right.
That's a really hard road to cross when you get there.
You didn't come back and put my refrigerator back, so I don't want to pay for the entire floor. We have people do that. They won't pay their invoice or their bill. They say because, I have a box of wood that I want to return. I want you to come pick it up. Well, politely, we're not.
We had a client a few years ago where we hooked up the big machine, and instantly, no power. And my guy goes down in the basement. There's literally smoke and flames coming out of the panel. Now, we haven't touched the panel. We haven't done anything with the panel. We've simply moved the stove out and hooked up to the stove. So the guy pulls up the panel, shuts down the power. We call the client and say, listen, you've got an electrical problem in your house here. There's some kind of faulty wiring or something. You'll need to get that attended to. So anyway, they weren't happy. A week goes by, 2 weeks go by. They wanted us to pay for the food that was in their freezer that didn't have electricity. And they're telling us we tried to burn their house down.
Right.
All we did was plug something into a wall. We did you the courtesy of going into the basement, turning off the main electrical panel so that your house didn't burn down, but somehow we're responsible. So,
you said it when we were kids. Remember, the policy in any store was, you break it, you pay for it. And I remember I was in industrial sales and hardware and that when I was a kid before I get into flooring. And this place opened up the road called Home Depot. Actually, there were several before that, and it evolved into Home Depot. And I remember I bought a toilet. I was installing it, and I tightened it before I had filled it, and I tightened it too much, and I broke it. So I brought the broken one back and said, here, I need this. And he goes, oh, yeah, just go throw it on the pile. And I got ready to pay for a new toilet. No, free. They just gave me one. Don't worry about it. We'll throw that in a pile. And it became that Home Depot mentality in our industry for years. Well, what are you going to do about it? And I know we broke it, but what are you going to give me free? And as you know, especially online or anything else you're in business in, nobody's in business to just give things away for free. It sets a really bad precedent for the value for what you're doing, especially in labor.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, when it's a product, it's costly, but it feels worse when it's your labor. When you've worked so hard with a client to try and overcome obstacles, because not every job goes perfect. So you try to work through some of the caveats, and every house is different. All of a sudden we're inheriting all of the poorly done renovations previous to us and everything like that. And you work so hard to get it through, and then they're just like, well, I'm not happy.
Right.
Sorry.
I remember the first time I went to court over a floor, and I got in there, and the judge bangs his gavel and says, we're going to take a 15-minute recess. We just walked in. And he said, there's a couple type of people here I want to explain this morning. You're either here for a legitimate reason, and we're going to sort that out, or you are here looking for something for nothing. If you're here looking for something for nothing, you're going to have a big problem with me. Recess. Go work it out amongst yourselves. I'm going to be proud of you people that come in back here and don't waste my time. And there were a couple people that came in and said, Your Honor, we got this figured out. Other people he was not happy with for, you showed up late 3 times, so I shouldn't have to pay for my kitchen set or whatever it might be. You spoke in an article that in Wood Floor magazine where you had talked about, people like to be treated like VIPs, not just your customers, your people, your staff, everything. It pays off, doesn't it?
It does, yeah. It's nice. Sometimes we'll get into a situation where in the showroom where we just have more people coming in than we have salespeople. So, you don't want to ignore those people. Hey, I'm sorry, I'm with another client. Can I make you a coffee? Make them a coffee, make them sit at ease, and absolutely. But one of the big things we started doing with COVID is we just started asking people to make an appointment.
Sure.
We had to do it during COVID because the local laws basically said, you can only have so many people in the building. They're trying to limit, how many people are in a confined space. But we do it to this day. We ask people, if you arrive, we'll help you. But if you arrive at the same time as somebody else that's got an appointment, the person with the appointment gets served first. It's such I can't believe I didn't do it earlier. It's so smart to do that. It's not because you're trying to be elitist. You just want to make sure that you can provide the level of service that client wants. It also gives you the opportunity to have a conversation with them and say, hey, bring some drawings, bring some measurements. If you've got an idea in mind, bring that magazine. Let's look at it. Let's see what we can do. It makes people feel better. They get better service because we don't overload our showroom. We can stagger things. If people were planning on coming at 8 and you tell them, hey, I've got 2 customers, 8, can you come at 9? They got no problems with that. And everybody's happy.
Do you need a large facility, or is it just you wouldn't know, right?
But it's a function of, on a Saturday afternoon in the summertime, for example, I got 2 salespeople that work every Saturday. So 2 customers come in, they're both occupied. Now, I could put 4 people on, but then I have some days where I've got 2 guys sitting there, surfing the internet. It happens. We're slow. I'd rather them use their time more wisely, but it is what it is, right? So you don't know how busy you're going to be. It's always the same situation. They say, if it rains, it pours. If things don't, everybody that's run a showroom is experienced. I got 15 people in the showroom, and then I got 4 hours of nobody in the showroom. Sure. We just try and spread that out a little bit. Make sure that everybody gets the time and attention they need. Everybody feels like, hey, they're important. I mean, we took time just for you.
For your online customers, do you have to carry a large inventory?
We always have. We're in a very competitive market. Sure. A lot of people don't realize that Toronto is the 4th largest city in North America. Wow. So Chicago and Toronto they go neck and neck for number 4 as far as population in all of North America. So we're a big city. And to be competitive in a big city, you need to be priced right. So we've always been volume buyers. For all of our sundries, we place bulk orders. We do our best. I mean, these days prices are going up so often. We try to stay a price increase ahead. It saves our contractors money. It saves our clients money, but it also allows us to be competitive with the other guys in our big city. So,
do you have to do a lot of deliveries or no?
If we do deliveries, we always charge for them. So our local deliveries, we just mark it up 5%, 6%.
Sure.
We've got some good local delivery guys. I know a lot of flooring companies do their own deliveries, but, there's always one of those things where you assume liability as soon as you start doing, deliveries. And there are delivery companies that are insured as delivering companies.
Sure.
When they bring that 6-foot box or 7-foot box into the living room and knock over the Ming vase, their insurance covers that. I'm a flooring guy. My insurance company's like, well, why were you doing a delivery? You're a flooring guy. So we leave that to them. We do it in a pinch. We have, delivery vehicle. We have a guy that can do that. We do pickups as well. But that's where, that's the emergency situation. I don't have a guy out there that just does deliveries. There's guys that do that, and they're good at it. Let them do it. And then we just pass that cost on to the customer.
We're in the industry, let's say in the wood flooring registry, et cetera, where do they plop you? As distributor, retailer, wholesaler? Usually
as a distributor. Yeah, we we buy most of the things that we stock, we buy in volume. So the only thing, like we used to stock a lot of items, but what we realized a long time ago is, XYZ manufacturer has a deal on pre-finished 2.25 maple, and they're like, you pick the color and we'll give you 2 truckloads and we'll give you this amazing price. You think I can pick the right color?
Right?
It's impossible, right? And what happens is you do that, so you end up with this great product, great price, and then you end up with 120 square feet left over. Well, what are you going to do with 120 square feet? So then you end up either selling that at a vast discount, or it ends up kicking around the warehouse to the point where it's all beat up and you just wrote off 120 square feet. So at the end of the day, your margins got cut even further because everything now for our clients is all cut orders. And it has to be now too. So many manufacturers are 6-8 weeks out. So that's been the nice thing about COVID too. The haggle is gone from the market.
Sure.
It used to be, a client would come in and say, hey, I want this Mirage floor. I want this, vintage floor. And, everybody kind of could get it. So you started competing for price. Now we're like, we can get it for you. It'll be 6 to 8 weeks. And this is the price. And they'll be like, well, the store down the road says they can get the same product for me and they can get it for me in 2 weeks. I'm just like, listen, here's the production sheet for that company. Mm-hmm. You see where the date is, where your product is. So you can buy it from the guys down the road and they can tell you 4 times that your product will be there in 2 weeks. Or I can just tell you now it'll be there in 8 weeks.
Sure.
And it's done. Thanks for being honest with me. Appreciate it. Thanks for your service. Here's my deposit. So
yeah, we'd all like things to move a little quicker. I mean, it is nice that flooring is $6 a foot, because in the next few years, if it goes back to 3, it's going to be hard to make up that volume. But I think one of the things we've talked about, I think it's been fantastic, is for decades and decades, flooring people worked for about $1 to $1.50 a foot. Some people $1.75, and finally $3.50, $4, $5 a foot, which they do get in metropolitan areas like LA and DC, etc. But you think when this goes and flooring moves back down to something like the $3.59, $3.60 level, etc., these guys are not going to drop their pricing. For the first time for their trade and their craft, which no one is out learning, they're getting paid well for it. God bless.
Yeah, it's always boggled my mind. Being a wood flooring guy, of course, anytime I did a house or my family did a house, we do our own installations, of course. Why wouldn't we, right? But every time, I need some ceramic done in my laundry room. I do some ceramic in my kitchen. I'm not a ceramic guy, so I know guys in that trade. So, I'll call them up. Hey, how much a square foot to install my ceramic? Oh, $5-6 a square foot. Like, I know it's a different trade and maybe there's a little bit more work, but not that much. I'm charging $2 a square foot to install a wood floor, and you're charging $5, and it's more now, $5 a square foot to install tile. I don't understand things here. Sure. You're right. Wood flooring has, for some reason, always been the low margin item, and I don't know why. I mean, flooring installers are tradesmen like anybody else. Anybody can swing a hammer and use a table saw, but not everybody can put down, a 7-inch wide pre-finished floor in a kitchen and around cabinetries. And, a lot of houses these days, you got curved staircases. You can tell the bad installers, you go in there and the quarter round's cut in 12 different pieces to make it around the corner, gaps all over the place. But
it takes them 30 test cuts to figure out the right angles on a compound miter.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you can be a fine wood craftsman and probably navigate putting in a floor, but don't tell me you're going to learn to sand overnight, because that's a disaster.
Yeah, sand and finishes. It seems like it's always a moving target. Just when you think you figured out the latest fail on a job, you get one that you've never seen before, and you've been doing it for 30, 40 years. Sanding and finishing is amazing stuff.
I do a lot of flooring mysteries with Floor Business and online, and it's because they just don't stop coming. That there's always somebody finds a new way, and you give them credit. They're really out there trying, and they feel not only they confident, but now they have the internet. So they know, well, I'll just watch on the internet. But a lot of what's on the internet isn't even right. There are people with hand Makita belt sanders cross grinding a floor. They're going to do the whole floor on their hands and knees. And then you see somebody with a tilt sander and somebody, I've seen professional shows where they're sanding and edging and you see a little belt sander. They cut to the commercial, come back, and you know somebody had an argument because now there's an industrial edger in the corner and the room looks great and nobody's explaining where that edger and the guy in the back that knows what he's doing just came from, because that is not the guy that started the project.
No, understood. I mean, I've seen some pretty crazy jobs, and yeah, so I've seen people that have had 3/4 inch flooring resanded and refinished. It was only the second time it was ever done, and that floor needs to be ripped out because the gouge marks in it and the sander marks in it are just so bad that you'd be there for a month and you'd lose half the floor just trying to get it flat again.
Oh, I once put my equipment in my father's house, and I said, "Oh, I was missing a few things," so I went down to get some more supplies. I came back and he had my sander. He was sanding the floor, no bag on it, no headset, and you know what he's doing? He was like it was a Hoover. He's like, the drum is full bore down. He's going left, right, 45, 15 degrees, all over like he was vacuuming a carpet. It's just eating flooring everywhere. And you know how he stopped the machine? He shut it off and it just wound down, grinding into the floor. Yeah. I'm like, Dad, I got this. Now I really don't got this because I have to redo this whole floor now. So yeah. We've seen a lot of crazy stuff. You wear a lot of hats at what you do. Of everything that you do, is there part of your job and your business that's your favorite part to do that you focus in on every day?
I really like the market. I like marketing.
Yeah.
I like delivering the message about what we do. I like bringing products to market too. I've had some experience. You know, we need this product. We want to bring it to market. We're going to, you know, when I did that laminate line out of China, you know, I spec'd that product. I learned a lot about how to design a product. It's a lot of marketing too, because you're developing a brand. We developed a whole brand on what it would look like, everything like that. I like that aspect of the business, and that's why I'm passionate about marketing, because it's important. You know, if you can't stand out from your competition, you're only going to go so far. You're just going to get whatever falls off the table. But if you can communicate what you do better, or communicate what you do better than other people, you're gonna be at the table, and you're gonna be eating with the rest of the big boys. But otherwise, you're just taking whatever falls off.
In your e-commerce, what are your go-to tools? Social media. What is the package that seems to work the best for you, or what are you using?
Digital is really the way to go. For a long time, probably for 15, 20 years in our local area, we promoted our business and we built our brand using radio advertising. And about a year ago, I just decided, you know what, we're not going to do radio anymore. But you know what we're doing? We're doing radio advertising on the digital platform. So if you have a Spotify free account, well, that's where you're going to hear about us, because we're doing radio ads in there. And the nice thing about digital, it's so versatile. You know, that's why podcasts have become so huge in the last 5 or 6 years. You know, some of the big guys out there, the big Lettermans of the world and stuff like that, they're doing podcasts because they can sell a 30-second ad 5 times on the same place in the same podcast. You know what? We know we have 1,000 listeners in New York, and we have 1,000 in California. We're going to sell that same ad space to both California and to New York. Sure. But as a person that's investing in that type of advertising, I can be super specific. I can say, hey, you know what? I want to market my business to this specific area of Toronto by postal code. By, you know, people's IP address shows up. It doesn't tell them exactly where they are, but it gives you a geographic area. So for big name brands, you know, they can say, hey, you know what? Our product's doing great in these 5 states, but for some reason we're not getting any traction in wherever, Utah. Well, they can digitally advertise just to Utah. So that's an amazing thing about digital. It really gives you, and it's much cheaper. I mean, we can do exponentially more advertising digitally than we could with just the traditional, radio, print sort of advertising.
Everything's at everybody's convenience. I was watching an interview about late night wars, all the different late night shows, and they were asking, why don't you folks seem to be attacking and going after each other? And they'd say, well, I watch so-and-so's show, and he watches my show because we don't have to do it at midnight. We don't even have to use those time slots. We create them, we air them, and people don't even watch them. They wait till it's at their convenience, or they wait like a Saturday Night Live. They wait to hear what the crowd response was, and they say, oh, you really got to see what happened last night, and they can go watch it at their convenience. It's target marketing. There's a lot that they can do with that.
Absolutely, yeah.
No, it's fascinating what you're able to do today and with the change. What is it like with you competitively? How do you handle that? Is there a lot of it, or there really, like you said,
there is. I sort of got to the point quite a while ago, early on when I was, when I took over from my dad, you get a bunch of, industry guys in the same room, some of which are your competitors, and everybody's like, hey, are you busy? How are you doing? Everybody's worried about, are they doing better than you, or are they doing, where do you fit amongst everybody else? I've just gotten to the point where it's like, what? I'm confident what we do is good. I know where I want to be. Put your head down and go there.
Sure.
I mean, if it's not working, change. But don't be worried about everybody else, what everybody else is doing. It's like running a marathon. If you're focusing on the guy behind you or the guy to your right or the guy to your left, you're not going to make it to the end of that race. Focus on yourself and the finish line and get there. Sure. We want to keep up to date on industry trends and things like that, but don't be overly worried about your competition. It doesn't breed a good business. If you're looking across the street and the guy across the street's 20 cents cheaper and you're 20 cents cheaper, and the guy down the road's got this product and you're chasing that product, you're just going to you frustrate yourself and, end up with less money and more headaches at the end of the day. Do what you want to do. Do what you feel is going to be good for your business. Choose the product lines that you feel you're going to get the support from, and just do it. And charge what you need to charge. And, if you need to adjust, you adjust, but don't and all decisions that are made on a knee-jerk reaction. Like I say, the guy down the road's got the same product for 50 cents cheaper. I'm going to drop my price.
Right. No,
it doesn't work at the long term.
You know what? You'll never go back. Once you head down that road, there's no turning back from that. Well,
yeah. And it's not the kind of market we want it to be in ever. So.
No, Tim, we had talked on the phone a couple of times. I said, well, don't worry about it because we're only going to talk 10 minutes. And I told you when we're done, it'll be an hour and 10 minutes. I appreciate you coming on with me and talking about Woodchuck. Can I run through some just quick fire questions and then we'll wrap it up? And I'm going to throw them at you. You answer them as quick as you can. And they go something like this. If you weren't in this industry, what would you have been doing?
To be honest with you, I probably would have been a photojournalist. I like excitement, I like adventure, and I like taking pictures. So I'd probably be a photojournalist.
How about anyone that you respect and admire from the industry over your years in it? You got a guru there or a mentor?
You know what? I've never been one to really be, my brother's always making fun of me because we'll be in Toronto, and Toronto's a big city, and there's a famous person. I don't even know who that is. I always just keep it to myself and the people around me. And what, if I respect you, you'll know it. And I don't know. I don't really get too involved in who's doing what, just have your own mentors. My dad was a great mentor. He's the hardest worker I ever knew, but I learned a lot from what he couldn't do. And he wasn't the greatest business person, but I'm telling you, that man had the best work ethic that I could ever find. So take positives from people, but also learn from their mistakes, because that way you don't have to make them.
Gotcha. Is there something that you would like to change in our industry?
I notice online a lot where, a lot of these online forums, people are bashing other people's work. A client will put up a floor and say, hey, would you guys accept this floor? And everybody's like, no, that floor is crap. I would never leave a floor like that. You know what, guys? Next week, it's going to be you whose pictures of a floor are up there, and the full story's not there. We're all on the same team. Let's realize that, we all have good jobs that we're super proud of, and we all have jobs that, hey, it didn't go quite perfect. Don't beat up on each other. There's sometimes a lot more going on in the background of that picture than meets the eye. So let's not fight with each other. We got to work together as an industry, support each other, and try and help each other. Just stop being so critical of other people's work. Just stop trying to elevate yourself by stepping on other people.
All right. How is Woodchuck as a company impacting your life or other people's lives?
I don't know. I'm happy where our business is right now. I'm happy where I am. I've taken a step back. I work 90% from home. I've got good guys. I like to think they're happy working for me. I like to think that I treat them well. And I look forward to at some point passing the reins on to, either another generation or even maybe one of my key guys, because, we worked hard and it's something we're proud of. So
last question, Tim Nassis, Woodchuck Floors. In your home, where you are right now, carpet? You got carpet in that place somewhere?
I got area rugs, but it's all hardwood.
Well, there you go. See, you're good.
Yeah.
Well, listen, I tell you what, I really, really appreciate taking time to chat with me. And the model that you have for business is just different than most people's. And it's fascinating to hear how some of that works for you and how you've got all this coming together. Again, super appreciate your time. It was a great meeting with you and talking with you.
Likewise. Appreciate it, Stephen.
All right, Tim. Well, listen, you take care and we will talk soon.
You too. Take care.
Thanks for listening to this episode of All Things Wood Floor, sponsored by Woodchuck Flooring. Flooring and customer service experts with 52 years under their tool belts. Before you go, don't forget to rate this podcast and subscribe so you don't miss a single episode.